Q-hens aren't real, or are they? My conversation today is with Kat McDavitt, founder of Innsena, a consulting firm focused on the market growth and success of healthcare tech companies and community-based organizations. Kat brings a truly incredible level of energy and commitment to everything she does, whether it's building a work culture requiring staff to devote time to passion projects or starting her own passion project, the Zoya Foundation, which supports professional advancement of women in healthcare. And yes, we do get to the story of the ingenious Q-hens aren't real campaign. Take a listen. Well, Kat, welcome to What's My Tagline. It's so great to be talking to a person I've actually known for many years and finally having you on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I was so excited when you reached out.
Yeah. The timing is good too, because I think I'm going to see you in October at the health event.
Absolutely. I wouldn't miss it.
We'll be there in Vegas. We will not tell people what we will be doing in Vegas. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I think that's a good rule in general.
Yeah. I know there's going to be perhaps some drinking and gambling in my future, but we'll see.
We'll see.
So, Kat, I gave our audience a little bit of a heads up as to what we're going to be talking about today on the episode of the show, but I gave you kind of a fair warning up front. My first question of all my guests is, if you had to describe yourself as a tagline, what would it be?
Yeah, I've been asked this question before, and my response to that remains, who knew would be my tagline. Yeah. I'm not one of those people who had a really great plan for what I was going to do with my career. I kind of tumble into things, and if I like where I tumble, I stick around and I dig in. And if I don't like where I tumble, then I tumble somewhere else.
Right.
But it's been a fun experience for me lately. I'm formally mentoring two people from a VC's mentorship program, and they're in college. They're about to graduate and like come to the real world. And it's been such a funny experience for me because this is my first true like formal mentoring program, like with an external party and all that. And these women, it's two women, they are like so mindful about their careers. They're thoughtful. They're doing all this work. They've had all the internships. They've got the right grades. They have the right connections. And like every time I talk to them, I'm just like, holy shit. All right. Like that has not been my life. But
it's like, who knew that I would be a mentor someday?
Like, this would have happened. Yeah, exactly. But that hasn't been my experience.
That's so funny. I think we're going to talk about that. I think about that mentoring and your foundation here in a bit, but let's start with your who knew journey. Just real quick, spend a few minutes telling our audience about who you are, who is Kat McDavitt. Your tagline, who knew? I mean, there's a story there, right? So give us a little color commentary and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to be brief because I'm sure this could go long. But yeah, I grew up nowhere. I'm one of 5 children. I'm the second oldest. I grew up with a stay-at-home mom, and I thought that women probably were, had babies and they worked for a little while and stayed home, just like my mother, honestly. And so I wanted to do well. I wanted to have a career, but like I kind of didn't have a strong working role model in my life. So, kind of as I got into health technology, as I mentioned earlier to you, I've always been a consultant, but I truly fell into that field. And kind of as I moved up, and I did have exposure to working mothers, women who just kind of, in my opinion, could do it all. And one of those, I've mentioned her many times before, is Miriam Paramore, who at the time was a big deal at MDON, now Change Healthcare. And just kind of watching her and her career, I was like, oh, like this is a thing that people do, and not to at all degrade the role of stay-at-home mothers or anything like that. You do whatever you want to do, I think is what I think about that. But I was very attracted to the working world. I really enjoyed the healthcare technology space. Even, as going from a PR cub into an executive. And so when I did have my boys and tried to figure out what I was doing, I was like, nah, like I'm going to do it. And it was really hard. And this kind of leads into, one of my big passion projects at Zoya Foundation. But I did eventually start my own business in Innsena after working for about 7.5 years at Dodge Communications, where we first met, Carol.
Yes.
after an acquisition, right, I kind of wanted to keep doing what I was doing. Oftentimes acquisitions are great, and sometimes acquisitions don't go in the direction you want. And I wanted to do something different. So I started Innsena with my boys being pretty young, and was almost, again, like, who knew, surprised that I had so many clients that wanted to work with me. I think a lot of times you have a hard time seeing how other people perceive you. But started in Innsena. A lot of my colleagues from my old company joined me, somehow did not get sued. That was
That was a win.
I was honestly too experienced to really know about a lot of those risks. So, ignorance is bliss, I guess. But about a year and a half into working at Innsena, I actually fell in love with one of my clients, Collective Medical, and sold Innsena. So sometimes I say Innsena is my third child that I never had, and then I sold it promptly, right? Which, it's a story for another day.
That happens. Yeah.
Hey, what are you going to do? But I was really attracted to Collective. I'd never had that experience. Many of my clients exited, they were hot shit startups. And that was something that whenever I did receive criticism about working with me as a consultant, it was, well, you don't know how it is on the corporate side. You've never done that. And I wanted it, and I believed in the Collective mission and what they were about. And so I sold it to my now business partner, Leslie Kirk, and went to be the chief marketing officer.
Chief marketing officer. Who knew? Chief medical officer. Yeah. Who knew?
Sometimes you can just become a doctor. And the chief of external affairs for that company, and had a really good time for several years, and did some really cool stuff, and got into the HIE space and understanding state government, Medicaid, the policy world. I ended up taking on all of that under my leadership. And then we were sold. We were acquired by a lovely company, Point Click Care, in late 2020. It was a virtual acquisition because of the pandemic. It was a really interesting experience going through that. And after that, I took them as a client. They remain a client at Innsena. I bought back in, and now I run that business with Leslie. So it's kind of been a little full circle experience. I run a separate practice that's very focused on go-to-market growth strategies for accessing government as a customer, policy as a tailwind for product, things like that. And as I mentioned to you earlier, we represent 9 HIEs. We represent 2 of the largest private sector data companies in the industry, and a number of other VC, government-oriented, nonprofit, all kinds of different clients in that space. And then along with that, in my other life, I also started Zoria Foundation, which is a nonprofit, a public charity that provides cash grants to women working in healthcare to help them pay for childcare and caregiving expenses, which ties back to that experience I mentioned earlier, where I like really didn't know or have exposure to women that had dealt with childcare and how much that cost, and how you keep working as a mother. And I'm very fortunate that I always did have access to high quality daycare, childcare, and I as I mentioned, have a mother who's very dedicated to her family and often would fly down to cover for my business trips. But I also saw many, many, many more women who didn't have that. And I think it's one of the reasons I was able to get so far in my career at an earlier age than some, because I didn't really have to pay that mommy tax that a lot of women do.
Right.
And I would like to be a part of that solution. I think it's great to write op-eds and be mad about the world, but I also get a lot of energy from having purpose and being a part of the solution. So I do work very hard and donate a significant amount of my own money, as well as text and beg as many people as I know to help contribute to that too, because I do think even that little bit of, a month's worth of childcare that we can cover at a time for a working mother, especially in a clinical role, does make a really big difference.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. You obviously have a passion for a lot of different things, but it's interesting that you've got your foundation, and we're going to talk here in a second about the culture, the work culture at Innsena, but also this idea that you're mentoring, right? Young women. This is obviously helping women, with either their career objectives or fulfilling their dreams, or from a financial standpoint, stems from your childhood. Did you have a mentor growing up, or did you have a mentor when you were in college or your career?
I didn't. I mean, I shouldn't say it. My parents are awesome. They are hardworking, and even my mother, as a stay-at-home mom, actually started numerous like small businesses on her own. So I have a background of very hardworking parents. My dad is he's a farmer, but he also is a retired 777 captain on American Airlines. Right, like multiple jobs, having a lot of work going on at any given time is definitely just in my family culture, right? Like you should work and you should have purpose. So that obviously was a great foundation. And I think all of my siblings have that as well. But as far as someone who was going to help me route through the professional world, no. I did not have that until I actually entered in and fell into the professional world. I can't say that I had someone kind of guiding me in that way. I did have a number of, again, back to the working all the time thing. At any given time in college, I had around 4 jobs at one time.
Oh goodness, right.
Yeah, and I mean that's an inability to say no, but I had a lot of exposure to different people, right? One of the this might be too rambly, but one of the, I guess, critical points in my college career was I worked at a coffee shop part-time. And I had a lot of business people that came in, and I got a lot of exposure to that because, even though, it's great, my dad was a pilot, he was not a business person, right? You're not learning a lot about the business world from a farmer, right? But I got a lot of exposure there. And that's actually how I got my first job, which unfortunately was as a drug rep because there was a founder who came in and he said, "You're really good at talking to people. I think you'd be great at this." And so, again, it's like I just tumbled into things.
Right. Farmers for you. Farmers for you.
Yeah, he was like, "Hey, girl." Again, I was not working for Purdue Pharma. I was not selling painkillers. The wound care pharmaceutical company, but yeah, I think that was helpful. But yeah, I mean, and that's to your point about why do I do all of this stuff? I kind of fell into it, and I fell into it later, right, where I had strong women mentors, and a good friend of mine, Maggie O'Keefe, always talks about the importance and difference between mentors and sponsors. I not only had mentors, I had sponsors, right? I had women who spoke up for me, who pushed me in the right direction. It wasn't just someone who I'd call for advice. I mean, these are women who, to this day, actively look out for me and push me in front of opportunities. So I think that's important too. And I feel very strongly that I have to pay that forward.
Yeah. So, they sound like sponsors are champions, I guess, of you, and they've made you a champion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I remember even when I didn't really tell anyone about what I was doing with Zoria, because I had no idea, again, what I was doing, like back to the who knew thing. I just kind of, I talked to a few people. I fortunately have a very strong network these days of women in executive positions and someone who advised me on how to start a nonprofit, what to do, what to look out for, what I should no longer do, that kind of a thing. And when I launched it, it was just like a little LinkedIn post. And those women who I'm talking about, and again, one of them is Miriam Paramore, one of them is Beth Minter, just like totally blew it up, right? Called me, sending checks, it's just really awesome to have that kind of support. And I want everyone to have that, right? And if you work hard and you care, then, there's no reason you shouldn't have that.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that part of what some of the messaging that you get out there, because I see it on LinkedIn and Twitter, is this idea that the staff in Innsena is going to devote a particular percent of their time to passion projects, right? Just like you do, right? I'm sure that's so unusual, number one, because you really just don't see that, and that, I guess, reflects, leadership reflects, right, the culture, and that's what the goal is, right? Like you said, people need to pay it forward.
Yeah, no, I yes, very strongly believe in that, and there's a couple of points to make on that program. So one is, you work hard, you do well, and Innsena has been fortunate in that we have worked hard enough that we are in a strong position to allow our teams that time, right? And we're well known, and you have to be excellent in this space, and we want to be the best. And so that's where a lot of this program came to be. Is one, for sure, you should follow your passions, blah, blah, blah. But two, I will only attract the best people, and I will only have the best consultancy if I make it a place where those best people want to work. And over and over, talking to the people who, I mean, I'm always recruiting, right? Whenever I'm with someone, whenever I'm at a conference, if I'm at an airport and I meet someone in this space, I'm always thinking, is this a person that can help me build this consultancy, right? And always the creme de la creme will talk about their passions. And it's something that sometimes is adjacent to their field. But there's a lot of times where that's something that they can work on for real, and it can become an actual revenue generating project too, right? And so not only are we making a difference, they're happy, they're making money, the consultancy is moving on and making money, and it works out for everybody. So carving that time out is obviously a great recruiting tool. We make a meaningful impact. Everyone on my team has done really cool things to move the ball forward for their passions. And in many cases, those become clients of theirs. And so it's really an awesome cycle to watch. And the other reason I do it, so that's one thing to recruit senior staff and to make sure that they have time to dedicate what they need. I will joke and say my two most senior leaders, two amazing women, have the hardest time picking one thing. I mean, so what they do, so we check in a lot, right? And so maybe once a month, I'm like, give me an update on your passion projects. And for them, they keep making umbrella terms up for their passion topic. And I'm like, no, one of them, Mrs. Brittany Matera, I'm going to make fun of her. She calls it access to care. And under this topic, she has like maternal health, opioids, Medicaid, coordination. I'm like, oh, good Lord. Like that is not a topic, right? So
that's 30,000 feet up. Yeah.
So basically your entire job. Okay. But for junior staff, especially, if I have someone who's coming in who has never been empowered to kind of do a lot of cool things, right? For them, this consultancy only grows if my people excel and become better than me. And I firmly believe that's one of the number one lessons I actually took from Dodge, where we met. Carol, our CEO, Brad Dodge at the time, told me that my goal as a manager, I was a brand new manager. He said, your number one goal is every year you have to replace yourself over and over and over, because that is the only way a people business grows. So with junior staff, especially, I want them to have what is in a book called Hack Your Bureaucracy as your paperclip. What thing can you get and what thing can you keep trading up and up and up until you too are an expert, you too have those relationships, and you can run your own practice as well. So for junior staff too, the passion project is very, very important. And this is I'll give another example of an individual. She's not junior, she's a director level, but is building her influence in this space. And her passion is helping justice involved individuals access care.
Wow.
And so she's taken a great initiative to work with a nonprofit in that space, and to learn both from the actual justice involved individuals, the people who work within the justice system, as well as now working with members of our great federal government to figure out how we can work things together. And it's all because she has that time to fly out to visit the state prison in Colorado, to go to board meetings, to meet new people. And it's really awesome to watch how much more quickly she's able to build her network, because she's just so in love with what she's doing.
Yeah, and the culture gives her the freedom to do that. I mean, obviously she's working hard and she's doing her job, but you look at this as a Venn diagram, right? That these are not separate railroad tracks, but they're crisscrossing over.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely an investment on Leslie and my part, Leslie Kirk, who is my business partner, for sure. And I've never seen it not pay off. So I'm sure something's going to happen or like something's a total disaster. But overall, looking at the positives, this has been something that excites my team. We get a lot out of it. They feel like they're really making a difference, and we don't have a lot of like super boring clients, right? I mean, some people might think they are. Some people might think Tefka's boring. I don't know, but I think it gives them that little bit of spice to work on and be excited about. And I absolutely love it. And I can't say I'm the best manager in the world. Like, I think my team would probably laugh from a very process-oriented perspective. It's not my jam. But what I can do is give people the freedom and guardrails and goals to be exceptional.
Yeah. There are tacticians and operationally sound people and managers that keep the business going. And then there are managers and leaders who inspire. And I think the greatest inspiration you can give anybody is please be greater than me, be better than me.
Yeah. No, please. And it's so funny too. Stop me if I'm rambling on this, but like I mentioned, Collective Medical was my first real job. That was my first corporate job where I wasn't a consultant or running a consultancy. And it was so interesting. And I think this is true of many companies because in a people business like Innsena, right? Like, again, we have to replace ourselves. We have to move up. We have to get new people going. And especially in a relationship-based business like this, you really have to share a lot of information. And, it's your job to get your people up to speed. And in a corporate setting, you don't replace yourself every year, right? Like, as a CMO, I'm not going to really replace myself, right? But what I ended up doing with that mentality is I took over different functions. And made space on my marketing team for individuals to move up into that space. And I did not see that behavior across the organization, right? It was like, this is my job and you're going to get to a certain point, person who works for me, but I'm not taking your career as seriously as I saw in consultancies, right? Because it's just a different incentive and a different motivation. And I really didn't like that.
Yeah. So we're going to pivot here just very slightly because you mentioned the Tefka acronym. Yeah. And so explain to our audience the whole Q-Hins aren't real idea and campaign and genesis. So you mentioned Tefka, obviously you work with a lot of HIEs in the space, and this is a huge conversation going on right now in healthcare. This path to interoperability, we've been involved in it for ever. You know what I mean? It's just like back meaningful use days, and even this talk about interoperability across the board. So Q-Hins aren't real has really gone really viral as much as it can go viral in this niche space that we occupy. So what was behind this?
Yeah. Well, let me give all the credit where the credit is due. The actual Q-Hins aren't real concept is a brainchild of Carrie Pycoach, who's a managing director on my team, and Max Kowalczyk, who is our graphic designer at Innsena. And all this kind of started because, again, we work in data exchange. That's my team every day is kind of in the field, figuring out where to get data, how we work with data use agreements, all these things. So this is kind of our world. And we were getting so many inbound inquiries, texts, whatever, emails with confused people saying, hey, our health plan just emailed and said, we're going to cut off our HIE agreement because we can get all of our data through Tefka. And I said, well, when did they do that? And they said, they're going to do it effective next month. And I'm like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And it's just so much misunderstanding of a very complex topic. And so, Carrie one day, Carrie's great at the world of meme culture and all that. And so I think she just started saying it on our Slack channel, like Q-Hins aren't even real or something, in her voice. I need to get her on here so you can hear her say it. And then Max again just jumped on and made this ridiculous graphic with the cat and the UFO, right? And it was just so perfect. And again, as we kept getting these inquiries or people saying, "Oh, Tefka for public health," and I'm like, "Yes, but that is not a today's solution, right? Those SOPs haven't even been written, right? this is a far off thing if it's even going to happen. And as we've discussed, it's not a mandatory program. So yes, we believe in the more opportunities for data exchange, the better, the easier access for patients, the better. But we were getting a lot of like, what the hells from the market. And that happens with something as complex as this. And you've seen the graphic that's supposed to explain TEFCA. It's got like 27 and a bunch of lines, right?
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's ridiculous. And that's not how you communicate to the public at large. That's how you communicate to a very technical audience. And unfortunately, I guess there wasn't a lot of money in the budget or something to simplify that message for the general public. And so this is what we get, right? And then we have the private sector involved becoming QHINs, and there's just a lot of game of telephone. And so, as Carrie was taking this campaign to the next level, as an example, she spoke on a panel at ASTO, which is the Association for State and Territorial Health Officials, to explain TEFCA and DMI and all these other acronyms. She wore that shirt to her presentation. She's just like a hilarious person.
My goodness.
And we posted it on LinkedIn. We got a lot of people saying, I want a shirt. And then we thought this is a really good opportunity to claim the narrative. If we can pull it off, right? Put it out there in the market, have a series of ridiculous days where we, as you saw, ask Mickey Tripathi to be photoshopped into a t-shirt.
Right.
And then how do we clear up even a little bit of that confusion and use social proof and elements of persuasion to do it? And on top of that, donate to a good cause. We donated to Project Hope. This is part of my passion project. Selfishly, it's an organization that takes women in with their children as they go through medication-assisted therapy for opioid use disorder. So really, I visited this place. I love it. Thank you to Sonia Chambers for introducing me to these awesome people. But yeah, so it was. We didn't really know what was going to happen. Kind of like my tagline, we had no idea that this was going to be as big of a thing as it was. But I think we got enough models into those t-shirts with some really ridiculous LinkedIn posts with a lot of capital letters that people were into it. And then the cool thing about it is, after a couple of weeks, everybody got their t-shirts. So
right.
Posting their selfies and writing
right. It started a whole nother wave, basically. Yeah.
But I think, and this is what we've told there, because our whole company didn't quite get it either, right? Like birds aren't real, humans aren't real, what are you gonna do? But we've explained a lot about like, okay, well, this is, yes, it was cool. This is a topic we care about, and we were able to clear up some misconceptions. But like, what a great example of using humor to simplify complex messages. And then use elements of persuasion, right, to kind of take the market for a little while. We had a couple of days where we took the market, and I hope that we used it effectively to communicate what we needed to.
Well, you did, and I'm dating myself here, but I remember when I first saw it. I don't know why, but like the '90s TV series, The X-Files, came to mind. The truth is out there. I was like, right, the truth about QHINs, it is out there, because I do know what TEFCA diagram you're talking about, and honestly, it's more complicated than following the family history of the English royalty. It's like something like that.
It's ridiculous.
So Kat, as we wind down our conversation today, I'd like to end with not a who knew, but what's next. I understand you're going to be speaking. You've got a speaking engagement at an event coming up. I know that's a what's next, but what's in the future for you?
Yeah. So, overall, I want my team, and my team doesn't necessarily have to be Innsena, right? But the people on my team, I want to be able to look back in 10 years and say, we had a huge part in connecting the country and making data flow. That's kind of my overall what's next. That's my 10 years what's next. Careers are long. Who knows what's going to happen after that? But then more near term, again, I want Innsena to become a really incredible organization for growth and change in this sector. And I think we're getting there. And I think that it's one of those days are long, but the years are short type of scenarios.
Sure.
And then passion project wise, obviously, I care very much about Zoria Foundation and having it be something that's sustainable and making a real impact for women in our industry. Absolutely. And then as part of that too, like you mentioned, some of these speaking engagements have coming up. I'm speaking with Dr. Casey Claiborne of the Addiction Research Institute, also out of UT Austin, about how we can use technology and some of that data exchange to impact the opioid epidemic, which does affect a number of, unfortunately, a large portion of women and their families in certain areas of the country. So that's kind of my near term, what I would like to impact, at least educate people on what's in the realm of the possible. More medium term, making sure Zoria is stood up and honestly that it can exist without me, right? That it's a self-sustaining thing and that we're making a difference no matter who is involved in that. And then, long term, like I want this country to be connected.
Yes. Oh, don't we all? Here's what I have to say. The healthcare industry and the health IT sector especially will be forever grateful to you for the work that you've done. It's really tremendous. Seriously, for somebody of your young years.
I was telling someone I got invited to, I'm going to butcher this name, the Young Health Leaders Summit on Monday in Raleigh. And it has the word young in it. And I just turned 40 and I actually had to email them. And I said, are you sure I'm invited?
Do I qualify as young? Yeah.
It's young anymore. Is it under 30? Like I said, these women I'm mentoring in this VC program, I mean, they're like, they can't even go to the bar with me yet. And they're like, oh my gosh, they're going to be president by the time they're like 38, and here I am like just dorking around. So
let's hope they're ruling the world.
Oh my gosh, they probably will. If I tell them, they like, I don't even know what advice I can give you guys. I just can tell you it's going to be fine.
Yeah, I know, right? Kat, it's been so wonderful catching up with you, and I look forward to seeing you shortly in a couple of months.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, Carol.
You can learn more about Kat McDavitt and her company at Innsena.com or on LinkedIn. And be sure to check out her nonprofit foundation, ZoriaFoundation.org. You can learn more about this show by visiting the program page on healthcareNowRadio.com and follow me on LinkedIn. Until next time, I'm Carol Flagg, and I want to know, what's your tagline?